Hi everyone, it's Ajanette, and when we last left off, we were getting into discussions about dreaming. And so first of all, I want you to know that we can dream in both non-REM and REM, but most of our dreaming, and certainly our more intense dreaming, is done in REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. Usually our dream periods get longer and longer as our sleep cycle progresses. So each sleep cycle is about 90 minutes. And then as we get further along in our sleep cycles, initially we start out dreaming just a little bit, and then as we progress through subsequent sleep cycles, we end up sleeping deeper and having more intense, longer dream periods. And so our longest REM period is just before we wake up. We usually have a good, strong memory for dreams when we wake up directly out of REM, even in labs, sleep labs. When they wake up individuals in the middle of REM, they usually have a really good recollection for their dreams, even for those individuals that normally report not dreaming. It's not that they don't dream, it's that they don't necessarily recall their dreams. So there's different theories about why we dream. Certainly Freud's theory is probably one of the most common and well-known, and his psychoanalytic theory suggests that dreams are really just disguised symbols of our repressed desires. So those hidden urges that we repress through most of our day and interactions surface themselves in our dreams. And so he talks about manifest content is what we're actually seeing in our dreams, and latent content are those underlying desires or meanings. So, if I have these repressed sexual urges, that's the underlying latent content, but the manifest content, it might be manifested in things like horseback riding or something of that nature. So the actual things that I'm dreaming about is the manifest, and then the underlying significance of those things is the latent theory. And then the biological theory just talks about how you have this activation that's occurring as brain cells are firing during REM, and that's just randomly triggering memories that are stored in those brain cells. And so dreams are really just kind of that random activation that's occurring. And then a dream is our way of synthesizing those sporadic firing together into one kind of coherent story. The cognitive theory really kind of looks at dreams just from a boring kind of processing standpoint, where it talks about dreams as just an important part of our information processing, memory consolidation, just kind of making sense of the world, organizing your learning that's occurred throughout the day. So I have kind of a boring view of dreams because I subscribe more to a combination of the biological cognitive approaches. I know the fun theory is the psychoanalytic theory, where Freud suggests that basically there's symbols in our dreams, and you need to work with a psychoanalyst to interpret those dreams for you. But I take that boring approach. I find that after I'm learning a new program or I'm building a new course, I dream a lot about it. And so I'm really just kind of processing my understanding of that new information I'm learning and organizing. And then sometimes, something comes into my dream, but if I put some thought into it, I recognize, oh, that's based on, I drove by and saw some house that caught my eye, and it ends up in my dream later on. And just the psychoanalytic theory is really hard for me to subscribe to, because I do believe in the power of the unconscious, but I don't necessarily think that our dreams are the royal road to the unconscious, as Freud would say. A lot of sexual repression came up in his dream interpretation. And when I have desires about sex, I just dream about sex. I really don't dream about symbols that represent sex, as Freud would say, like guns representing penises or horseback riding representing sex. I really just dream about actual sex. So just that doesn't align with my theory, but lots of people subscribe to psychoanalytic theory of dreaming. Sleep disorders include dysomnias, where we have trouble with sleeping or maintaining sleeping. Parasomnia is where we are experiencing sleep disturbances. With dysomnias, insomnia affects about 10% of the people. This is difficulty falling asleep, or it's staying asleep, so frequent waking throughout the night. Narcolepsy is when we suddenly fall asleep for no apparent reason. Maybe a professor in the middle of a lecture just suddenly falls asleep. There does seem to be this genetic component where we do, in fact, have families where it runs in families. It is fairly rare. Cataplexy is the kind of a loss of muscle tone that goes along with narcolepsy. So people can literally like fall down and fall over like you might see in a movie. And sleep apnea is the absence of breathing during sleep. It's the most common dysomnia that there is. It's heavily associated with obesity and age. Men are more likely to have it than women, and it can lead to heart disease and death. There was a famous NFL football player that actually died of sleep apnea. So often your partners are the one that might diagnose you. They might be like, hey, because they notice you stop breathing and you get an elbow to the side. That's a good indication you might want to see your doctor. Parasomnias are sleep disturbances, which include nightmares, night terrors, sleepwalking, and sleep talking. Nightmares are usually bad dreams. They happen during REM, usually at the end of your REM cycles. Night terrors are when you have movement during your sleep. You might wake up screaming or something of that nature. Those are usually in non-REM, often in stages 3 or 4, because those are the deeper sleep stages. During REM, remember, our body is paralyzed. Our large muscles are paralyzed. So we're typically not moving around during REM. But with night terrors, we can. Sometimes when we're having nightmares, we have this dream like we can't move. Well, literally our bodies can't move. So that might explain why that comes into our nightmares. Sleepwalking, again, because our muscles are paralyzed, that's usually going to happen during non-REM. And sleep talking can be common in non-REM. It can happen in REM because it's not involving our large muscles, but it usually happens right before we're going to wake up. I actually am a sleep talker, so you can get all my secrets from me at night. Okay, so when we treat sleep disorders, what we want to do is practice good sleep hygiene. And part of that is removing electronics from the room. Now, I'm a total hypocrite because I sleep with my TV on. We should incorporate exercise into our weekly and daily schedule, but not right before we go to bed. We should avoid stimulants like caffeine and nicotine and smoking. Shouldn't eat right before we go to bed. Give yourself about 2 hours to digest that. Establish a very consistent bedtime routine, like a shower and some reading or some meditation or something of that nature. And then you might want to practice progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense up your muscles and you do it in muscle groups. Sometimes people like to do it from head to toe, where you tense a portion, relax, move to the next portion, tense, relax, move to the next portion, tense, relax. And what you're doing is, because you're forcing your muscles into a state of increased and maximum tension, the only state that they have to go is relaxation. Kind of like when you hit a brake or you're trying to release an emergency brake, usually pull it a little tighter and then it can only relax. And so that's what you want to do with your muscles as well. Additionally, psychoactive drugs can influence your states of consciousness, and those are chemicals. They can change our awareness, our perception, our mood. Sometimes they can have positive effects on our mood, sometimes not so positive. What they end up doing is they change how we synthesize neurotransmitters, or how we release neurotransmitters, or how we receive neurotransmitters. And they can sometimes block the reuptake or breakdown process of neurotransmitters, so we can maintain neurotransmitters in the synapses for longer periods of time. Psychoactive drugs can be agonists or antagonists. Agonists, they end up enhancing the effect of a neurotransmitter, so they can somewhat fake the effect of the neurotransmitter, and they can stimulate the same reaction as the neurotransmitter would. And sometimes they can block the reuptake process, so that what happens is your body releases neurotransmitters into the space in your neurons, the synapse, and it gives your body time to process it. But we're also very efficient, and we kind of have recycling in our genes, so to speak, and that we have a reuptake process that doesn't like to litter, and whatever neurotransmitters aren't being used by the neighboring neurons, they get sucked back into the original dispensing neuron. And so some agonist drugs can actually block that reuptake process, stop the recycling from happening, and leaving the neurotransmitter in that space longer to be processed. An antagonist drug actually kind of does the opposite. Instead of enhancing the effect of the neurotransmitter, it inhibits it. An antagonist is kind of your enemy. They block you, they get in your way. And so what they do is they decrease the release of neurotransmitters, or they prevent you from storing it or processing the drug. So because they are they are blocking that message of the neurotransmitter. So here's a visual image where you have a normal transmitter. It kind of fits the receptor site, stimulates the nerve. You have an agonistic drug where it also fits in, and it mimics that neurotransmitter, so it still activates the nerve. And then you have an antagonist where it blocks it, so your neuron cannot receive the correct neurotransmitter, and consequently there's no nerve impulse sent based on that neurotransmitter. And so again, you just see a visual, a process and discussion of what the agonists versus antagonists are doing. So just a couple key terms related to psychoactive drugs. Drug abuse is when it's causing physical or psychological harm to you or others. Addiction is when you have that compulsion and you can't resist the urge. You actually deny the opportunity to engage in other activities just so you can get high. We can have psychological dependence where emotionally you have a mental craving and you need it for some psychological purpose, and physical dependence where you actually experience physical symptoms or withdrawal in the event that you don't get the neurotransmitter. Sadly, we do build up a lot of tolerance to drugs, meaning we become desensitized to the drug and we need a larger volume or dosage in order to get the same effect. And we can develop cross-tolerance where not only are we developing desensitization toward that drug and need a larger and larger dose, but other drugs within its class, we're becoming, if we're drinkers, we might become tolerant of other depressant drugs as well. And so withdrawal symptoms are physical symptoms often associated with pain and discomfort when we discontinue the use of a drug. And there's all different types of drugs. There's main categories including depressants, which typically will reduce our tension, maybe create some euphoria and we're not as inhibited. We can also have muscle relaxation and drowsiness during depressants. Stimulants are kind of opposite. They create exhilaration, euphoria, and they create a lot of energy in our body, both physically and mentally. And then opiates actually create a rush of pleasure, that euphoric state. They can also serve to be analgesic and relieve pain. And then hallucinogens actually create heightened aesthetic responses, so we're a little bit more sensitive and we enjoy things sometimes more. We can also experience delusions and hallucinations during it, and so it ends up distorting our perceptions. Different drugs have different effects. I'm just gonna just a couple of things. Depressants are highly addictive. Tolerance develops quickly, can also be terminal if we stop it suddenly. So alcohol should not be used with other drugs because it's a depressant. It can actually stop your breathing or decrease your breathing, and that's what we saw with like Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson death. The number one cause of the number one psychoactive drug that contributes to deaths in the US is nicotine, so cigarette smoking is bad. And then a lot of club drugs that we see right now on the market can't even be detected, so very dangerous because you may not be aware you're ingesting it. Okay, I'm going to come back and finish this chapter in just a minute.